Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, geeks and nerds and ambassadors everywhere, and welcome back once again to the Ambassadorial Wing. And I hope you're having a wonderful Friday night. It is Friday night. We are live here on the A Wing, the Ambassadorial Wing, where we talk cinema, modern culture, where we talk Marvel, we talk DC when it's good, we talk movies and why we love them. And if this is your first visit to the Ambassador Wing, welcome. I hope you enjoyed the stream tonight. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. And tonight's going to be I think this is going to be a good topic. Going to be a fun topic to discuss because, as you all know, if you don't now, where you been? I love Marvel. Hi, hello. I always get things reversed on this stupid camera. But yeah, I love Marvel. I grew up reading Marvel comics. Most of you know this. Most of you are very well aware of this fact. And tonight we are going to talk about something that I think is maybe not necessarily overdue, but something that's been on my mind. And you all might be asking, Ambassador, why aren't you at work? You work nights. No, I haven't been let go. No, I haven't quit. My back is giving me grief. For those you may on social media who talk to me on the regular, I unfortunately have developed an issue with my sciatic nerve in my lower back. I've got a little discs that don't like to cooperate with the nerves back there. So unfortunately, I couldn't work tonight. Okay, well, I can't work, so I'm going to have a little fun with my friends. And I will be dropping the link here in just a few minutes into the chat. I have dropped the link over on Twitter and everything in a couple of the DM groups I am on. So if you're a part of those DM groups, the link is there. By all means, if you want to join me tonight and let's talk Marvel villains, hit that link and hop on in here. But I will drop the link in the chat here in just a second. But before we do that, so just a little bit of housekeeping, the usual stuff. Smash the like button, share this out with your friends. If you're not subscribed already, of course, subscribe. And another thing y'all might be asking, Ambassador, you hit 500 subs. Where the hell is your 500 sub celebration? As soon as I get the time and I get everything in order to do that stream, I will be doing my 500 sub celebration. It's just working nights, working overnights, working late shifts, having to sleep during the day, and all that mess. It's not always easy, but things will be changing. For those of you who also follow me on social media will know this. I did recently get a brand new job, and it will allow me more freedom. Also, allow me to obviously take care of the house, take care of myself and the missus, Madam Ambassador, and take care of everything we need to take care of. But it will also free up my schedule quite a bit to stream, to do videos and do shorts and all those other fun things, and do that long overdue celebration stream where we will be doing a watch along for Galaxy Quest, where we will be doing my very first giveaway ever of a 4K copy of my all-time favorite movie, The Fifth Element. And yes, we will be doing that through a through a contest where you will have to guess my first name. Yes, we will be doing a name reveal for yours truly, the Ambassador. No, not full name, just my first name. And unfortunately, for those of you who already know my first name, sorry, you don't qualify for the giveaway. It's nothing personal. It just wouldn't be fair to everybody else. But with all that being said, let's get into the topic of the evening. But first things first, let me drop that pesky little link in the chat so all you wonderful friends, all you fellow ambassadors can hop on in here and join me for the stream, join me for the discussion. Because like I said, this is going to be a fun one, because this is one that this is a topic. I mean, it's Marvel. I love Marvel. You all know this. I'm here for the fight. And to the chat, DJ Ronnie G and Daniel Martin, fellas, good to see you. And no, Daniel Ambassador is not my first name. I'm not an actual ambassador. It just sounded cool when I thought of it. So, but let me get that stream link in here real quick and everything, so that any of you that want to jump on with me and everything to discuss this won't be so much of a debate. DJ, no, that's a girl's name. Do I look girl to you? I do not go for all that mishegas. I was born a man. I've lived my life as a man. I am a man. Period. Oh, wait a minute. No, I didn't do that right. Dang nabbit. Hang on. Just real quick. Okay, remove. All right, let's try this again. Stream link space. There we go. That's better. Paste. Send. There we go. Oh, and George question. No, I have not seen Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania yet. Either me and the missus or just myself tomorrow are going to go see it then. And I haven't decided if I'm going to do a review of it as of yet because people had it. I might not. I am hello buying. So, but yeah, no, George, I haven't seen Ant-Man Wasp, but I do fully intend to. Obviously, I've got the freaking poster right behind me. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna go see it. We just haven't gotten around to it yet because this is one that me and the missus have been talking about going to see together, and I don't want to go without her. So, but yeah, anyway, okay, the link's in there. Let me bring up the chat so I can switch up into one of the Haven and make sure I don't have any stupid idiot spammers. Of course, I got George here. He's a good wrench. He's a good egg. So, but yeah, tonight we're talking the villains of the Marvel Universe, not just specifically the MCU, although that will be a topic throughout the night and everything throughout the stream. We're going to be talking about our favorite villains, why we love them, who we hope to see next, who we have already seen, what we thought of those interpretations of those villains, and so on. And I'm, of course, give my thoughts as well. So, but as the old saying goes, every hero needs a great villain. And when it comes to the Marvel Universe and the MCU, we have gotten, I think, some very good one-off villains, but also some very good reoccurring villains and everything. And obviously that is true in comics as well as it is in the MCU. You've got villains that are one-off. They get beaten. They get unalived, or they get sent to prison, or whatever gets done to them, or they come back. They're like a giant template cockroach, like Apocalypse. As Wolverine wants to refer to him as, you templated cockroach. Yes, go look it up. Go watch the X-Men 90s. Go watch the X-Men 90s animated series on Disney Plus. Go check, or if you have it on DVD or Blu-ray, there is an episode where Wolverine refers to Apocalypse as a tin-plated cockroach because, well, it literally takes nuclear war to kill Apocalypse. And, I think that's as good enough a segue as any. Let's talk about Apocalypse. Now, obviously, this is a character that has had many interpretations, made many appearances throughout the years, both in comics and animation, and on the big screen. With, of course, the Oscar Isaacs playing the titular Apocalypse, or in Sabanur. So, and his first appearance, and I actually used to have this comic book issue, was his first appearance was actually not until the X series, which was a comic run series or anything that when it first started off was the original X-Men team, the original core team, which is, of course, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman, Beast, and Angel or Archangel. And did I say Beast? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I said Beast. And Apocalypse didn't make his first appearance, his first full Out of the Shadows appearance, until I think like issue 18 or something along in there. But this is a villain that has had a long-standing feud with the X-Men. So, yeah, Daniel, same here. And honestly, one of my all-time favorite Marvel villains, and just a great villain in general. And with a very interesting, complex backstory, which they actually did cover in a limited series I think it was like in the late 90s or early 2000s, back when I still had the time and the energy to collect and read comic books, called the Rise of Apocalypse, which told of his origins, where he came from, the fact that he was in fact the first recorded mutant born into the world. Now, of course, at the time, he wasn't the imposing figure that we have seen him as so often in animation and the comics and the movies and so on. And yes, I will say this. I said this when I did my review for X-Men Apocalypse back a few weeks ago. I thought the design for Apocalypse the in the film very was well in keeping with his design in the comics. I'm just glad they didn't make him that shade of purple. I'm glad that there was an outcry from the fan base, and I was one of those people in the fan base that said, "Why is Apocalypse a purple? He's not purple. He's blue and gray, and maybe a little silver." So, but it has been an interesting journey to see a villain like Apocalypse evolve and change over the years. And while his motivations stay remarkably the same, his appearance and sometimes his mannerisms have, because there have been a few instances where we have seen Apocalypse. Oh, George, I have no doubt. And we will get to Kang as well here in a little while, because I do. When I say I'm going to discuss all the Marvel villains, I'm going to talk about not just the ones that are more pertinent, and of course, that is Kang, as you all saw the thumbnail. And I worked my butt off on that thumbnail, by the way. And thanks to Canva, non sponsor of the channel, obviously. But I love my Canva app. It makes great thumbnails, makes great channel art, and it's just a really good um, uh, thumbnail and art app. But throughout the years, Apocalypse is one of those who always seems to be on the verge of winning, and then he gets run off, or he's just like, screw it, it ain't worth the headache. I'm out of here. Screw you, X-Men. Or as Cartman would say, screw you guys, I'm going home. Wouldn't it have been funny if Apocalypse actually sounded like Eric Cartman from South Park? I am Apocalypse. All who oppose me shall be crushed. Oh, George, I feel your pain, so to speak. Obviously, not eye pain, but back pain. So I get it. But Apocalypse. What can you say about him? He's big. He's menacing. He can do practically anything he puts his mind to. He can change his size. He can make his arms into all sorts of weapons. He's immortal. Although he does cheat at his immortality, he wasn't born naturally immortal. He was just born with the ability to change his molecular structure, which is still pretty badass. But let's make no mistake here. But he got all that kind of like Marvin Marsh. There was supposed to be a kaboom, and then shattering kaboom. Where's my kaboom? That's my Marvin the Martian, although Mel Blanc did it much better. But yeah, Apocalypse. What can you say about him? He is the type of villain that sort of all other villains are measured against, because he is like that Omega level. He's like that final video game boss villain that's hard as hell to beat or kill. He really is. Apocalypse is one tough mother. I mean, the X-Men throw practically everything they have at him, and he's just like, "Oh, you're there? I didn't see you there." Stomp. Although I will say one of my favorite stories that's centered around Apocalypse was actually, it was a limited run series that was in I think the early to mid 90s. It was called The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix. And it actually ties into Scott Summers and Jean Grey's wedding, and they go on their honeymoon. And their consciences, or their souls, if you want to say it that way, get removed from their bodies and flung into the far, far, far distant future. and essentially they're having to raise their son, Cable, aka Nathan Christopher Summers, or if you prefer, just one of the biggest badasses in the X-Men team on the X-Men team. But in this particular instance, Apocalypse has gotten so old that he's having to transfer his consciousness, much like what we see in the X-Men Apocalypse, the live action film. He transfers his consciousness from body to body because the bodies that he picks can't contain his power for too long because they start to burn out and start to break down. And in that particular series, we finally do see the end. We see the death of Apocalypse in canon, per se. Although, of course, like a bad egg, Apocalypse always seems to pop right back up. Now, granted, that particular series, The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, is considered more of I want to say more of an Elseworlds within the MCU. It's not, or the Marvel Universe, the comics. It's considered more of a side story that's not connected to the main canon, but it is still somewhat tied into the main Marvel universe timeline and canon. And to the chat, Jacob Ironside. Jake, it is good to see you, buddy. Appreciate you popping in this evening. Hope you're doing well, and hope your channel is doing well also. So appreciate you stopping by. It's high quality H2O. Yes, I've seen the Warboy, and yes, I love it. Don't judge me. But anyway, you talk about Apocalypse. There's one particular villain that is very closely tied to Apocalypse that you cannot avoid, nor should you, because he is a very good villain. And he's, of course, another villain from the X-Men universe, and that is, of course, Daniel Essex, aka Mr. Sinister. And here's another character who does have very close ties to Apocalypse. Here's a character who actually got his powers from Apocalypse. Yeah, George, I've been thinking the same thing. I'm still, I've made this assertion before, and I'll say this briefly here before I get back onto the main topic of the night, the villains, obviously. The mutants are going to come in one of two ways. Daniel, yes, indeed. Nice fresh H2O. The mutants are going to come in one of two ways. They're either going to be merged into through the multiverse, and they've kind of hinted at this in a couple of the more recent Marvel series. One being, of course, Miss Marvel. That she is in a way a mutant herself, that because of all the cosmic radiation that has been popped off on Earth between the blip and the snap, the use of the Infinity Gems, not to mention I think some of the events in the Eternals film might play a part in that as well, because that released a lot of, for lack of a better term, cosmic radiation. So it is possible that mutants will start to naturally occur, but you might see some of the more familiar faces from the X-Men universe pop into the MCU from another universe. I mean, considering what they did with Loki and what they've done with what they did with WandaVision and what they did with Multiverse of Madness, and I imagine Quantum Mania is going to play a part in this as well. With all that cosmic radiation that Earth has been exposed to, we know what cosmic radiation can do. It can cause mutations. So it is possible, I'm not saying it's definite, but it is possible that that's how we're going to get some more of the X-Men. Or at least more mutants, more naturally, for lack of a better term, naturally occurring mutants, more naturally evolving. They evolve from the current population. Yeah. Daniel, she is, I think, what they do regard as an inhuman. But what is an Inhuman really if not a mutant, just by a different name? I mean, if you look at the Inhumans, they are essentially mutants. They were just experimented upon rather than being a natural evolution of mankind, or, well, of humanity. So, mutant and human, tomato, tomato, potato, potato. If it all goes schnink, who cares? So, but getting back to the main topic of the night, and that was, of course, the villains. Mr. Sinister, he's not what you would regard as the big bad that goes onto the battlefield. He's more of a manipulator. He's more of a schemer. He's more of a work in the shadows type of villain. And of course, he does, like I said, he does tie back to Apocalypse, because Apocalypse was the mutant that gave Nathaniel, the man known as Nathaniel Essex, who was a scientist, was a early form of a geneticist, all of his abilities, gave him his invulnerability, gave him his immortality, and so on. Um, Gave him his very pale, pasty skin. Of course, the costume would evolve over time. But, we haven't seen. Now, granted, we have seen, I think that we've seen a very good portrayal of Mr. Sinister in the X-Men animated series from the 90s. I cannot recall if Mr. Sinister ever appeared in X-Men Evolution or Wolverine and the X-Men. That's one I'm not aware of, or not, if he ever appeared there. But Sinister is always one of those villains that doesn't get into head-on confrontations. He can do it if he has to, but it's not his particular forte. He's more of a schemer. He's more of the background villain who sends out his little henchmen, the Marauders, and everything, to do his dastardly deeds. Although, with a name like Sinister, how can you be anything but dastardly and, well, sinister and evil? But I will say, from his one on-screen appearance, and that, of course, being, like I said, in the X-Men 90s series, animated series, he came off as a bit of a, how do I want to put this? He came off as a bit of a pansy, because he always let everybody else do his fighting for him, rather than him manning up and doing his fighting for himself. Now, granted, as I've mentioned, that wasn't the dynamic of his character. He wasn't like Apocalypse, who would go out and do the fighting himself or would fight alongside his own henchmen. He always let everybody else do the fighting for him. So now the question is, are we ever going to see Mr. Sinister in the MCU? My hope is yes. Now, granted, we did get hints at him in, I think it was X-Men Days of Future Past. No, it wasn't Days of Future Past. It was we got hints of the character in, it was actually a post-credit scene in X-Men Apocalypse, when they go back to the base at Alkali Lake, and you see the briefcase with the different vials or anything that those black suits were collecting, and you see the name Essex Enterprises or Incorporated. Essex is, of course, a tie back to Mr. Sinister. So, while we never got a payoff for that, my guess is down the road in the MCU, yeah, Daniel, and that's what I just brought up. I know the chat's a little bit behind between StreamYard and YouTube, but I really hope that we do eventually see, and we do have a on-screen, if not numerous on-screen appearances with Mr. Sinister. Personally, he is a very intriguing villain, a very intriguing character, and I think one that has a lot of potential for good storytelling, a lot of good stories that can be told with. Not necessarily the ones that have already been done in the comics per se, but stuff that they can put together on their own that I am by all means a supporter of. But we've covered X-Men for a few minutes now. Let's move over a little bit. Let's actually work our way through, at least part way through, not all the way through, the villains that we've gotten so far in the MCU and into their their on-screen appearance or their comic book appearances as well. And of course, with the first Marvel movie, who did we have? Of course, was the one and only Mr. I Am Iron Man, Tony Stark. And we had a performance by personally a personal favorite actor of mine, of course, being Jeff Bridges as Obadiah Stane. Now, most of us never heard of Obadiah Stane before we saw this movie. Now, I did read Iron Man comics, but he wasn't one of my main characters that I followed and anything. So I wasn't familiar with Obadiah Stane, but I will say this much in terms of Jeff Bridges and his performance as Obadiah. He came off as very charismatic and also at the same time very sinister. Yeah, George, I have to agree. I have done some research on him, and do I think he was maybe underutilized for this first film? Maybe, but I don't think he needed a repeat appearance per se either. Obadiah Stane was a good one-off villain. He was a good counter to Tony Stark. Granted, he was a darker version of Tony Stark, which is what any good villain would necessarily be. He or she would be a darker version of the main antagonist or the main protagonist, the hero. And Obadiah is an old corporate bigwig. He's worked with the Starks in the past. He took over everything in the interim after Tony's parents were killed. And honestly, I really enjoyed Jeff Bridges' performance as Obadiah. Not to mention, he just had a cool name, Obadiah Stane. Obadiah is a biblical name, a very, very old biblical name, but the character that's portrayed in the film, he on the outside look and everything, he seemed like the type of person. While he was a corporate bigwig, he seemed like a fairly down to earth individual. He seemed like the type of person that if you met him on the street, you might be able to have a beer with him. Now, would you necessarily want to if you knew what he was? Yeah, Daniel, I remember that line well. Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a bunch of scraps. And then that poor scientist is like, I'm not Tony Stark. I just work for him. Of course, he didn't actually say that part, but regardless. But it's, what Jeff Bridges brought to that character, brought to that performance was believability. Because you could believe that this is a person that could actually exist in the real world. That there might be a corporate bigwig out there that might be as scummy and sleazy as Obadiah Stane. Really. Not to mention with the last name like Stane. I'm looking for an Obadiah Stank. Oh, no, Obadiah Stank. Oh, it's Stane? Oh, okay. Sorry. Obadiah Stane. Okay. But, honestly, Jeff Bridges is one of those actors who's had a lot of work in his later years. I am happy for that. And his performance as the villain in this movie, it wasn't until he told Tony that he was the one that forced him out that you start get the feeling maybe this guy isn't on the up and up. And then we find out, oh, he's the one that planned the whole scheme to have Tony Stark kidnapped and potentially killed. Wonderful. And then he has an absolutely great scene where he comes into Tony's place and he steals the arc reactor out of Tony's body. And he's so creepy and so in your face, and he has that line, just because you have an idea doesn't mean that it belongs to you. Yes, it does. That's yeah. Yeah, Daniel, you're not wrong. That last name is begging to get ribbed with a name like Stain. Yeah. But that scene where he takes the arc reactor out of Tony, he's potentially going to be leaving him there to die. Then you're like, oh, I don't like this guy. It's one thing for him to force Tony out of his own company, but it's another thing to have him killed. I mean, the one thing, okay, you could kind of get because it's all about business, it's all about money, it's all about protecting the bottom line. Okay, fair enough. Tony was acting somewhat irrationally if you want to really look at it pragmatically. But to kill this guy, to kill Tony, that's just it. Now, but I will say the one other scene that he had and everything. Now, all of his scenes in that movie, Bridges delivered. But when he meets with the terrorist, the one that captured Tony, and he flips the script on Mr. Baldy, Mr. Bald terrorist dude. I forget his name, the head of the Ten Rings or wherever the hell he is. Doesn't matter, he's dead. I really like that scene. Because while they're both scumbags, while they're both dirty dealers, Bridges brought something to that performance that was just. It had a really good quality to it. And while you hated Stain for what he was doing, you hated the other guy just a little bit more because he threatened our boy Tony. But then, of course, they have the fight at the end and everything where Bridges is in that Ironmonger, and I love the exchange between him and between Obadiah and Tony. And when Tony says, "Did you solve for the icing problem?" and Obadiah is like, "What icing problem?" I'm guessing he didn't. I guess he did not account for the icing when you get into higher altitudes. But moving on, like I said, I'm not going to cover every single villain that has appeared throughout the entire MCU. We'd be here all bloody night. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, y'all have things you do want to do. I have things I want to do, but I still want to spend some time with y'all regardless. Of course, the next one we have an appearance from is, of course, one that we have actually come to grow and love. And that's, of course, Loki. And Tom Hiddleston as Loki. And one who's even gotten his own bloody series, even though technically he's a villain. But he's reformed. He's reformed now. He wasn't a villain because he was like strictly evil. He was a villain because he was misunderstood. And I think that is why we have we give a little more forgiveness. Not to mention, there are parts of Thor the Dark World, and Thor Ragnarok that really start to help Loki in a big way. Now, do I approve of him doing what he did to Odin? No. Do I approve what he tried to do to Thor? No. Do I approve what he tried to do to the city and state of New York and potentially the world? No. But at the same time, Loki is one of those villains that while you are supposed to dislike him, and believe it or not, we do. We have the proper emotional response to Loki. He grows on you, but in a good way. And I think, like I said, like I mentioned, in the series, the season 1 of Loki, and of course, like I said, Thor: The Dark World, Thor Ragnarok, we get a look behind the motivations of this villain that could have simply been just a one-off or a two-off villain. But think about it. Think about how many movies Loki has appeared in throughout the years. Now, obviously, Thor, the first one, Thor: The Dark World, Thor Ragnarok, the Avengers, the first one, the big one, the Loki series. If I remember correctly, Tom Hiddleston did his own voice work for What If, where he appeared as a frost giant instead of being an Asgardian, or an adopted Asgardian. And yeah, Daniel, you hit it right on. You hit it right on those. Loki had one of the more compelling story arcs of all the MCU villains. Yes, he really did. Because this is a guy who we initially are like, okay, he doesn't seem like too bad of a guy, but then we find out, oh crap, he's the big bad. Well, then he's working for the big bad, and they're like, oh crap, But then, and I know people will give Thor: The Dark World kind of a bum rap, and I can kind of understand why. But there is aspects of that movie, in particular when it comes to Loki and his relationship with Freya, who was played by Rene Russo, if y'all remember. It really starts to humanize him, really starts to make him appear more than just to be the big bad. And that's honestly, that was a great move on the part of the director. I can't remember who directed Thor: The Dark World off the top of my head. It might have been Kenneth Branagh, or was it somebody else? I'd have to double check. But that's not important right now. And then we have in the Avengers, we have Loki as the big bad. He's a good villain. He's a very good villain. Grant. He's got the Mind Soul or the Mind Stone scepter, where he's turning people into flying monkeys. I get that reference because Captain America would get that reference because it was probably the last movie he saw before he got put on ice, literally. And he has some really great lines of dialogue, particularly with Black Widow and with Tony, particularly in Tony's apartment at Avengers Tower or Stark Tower. And what do I have? What do I have to? The Avengers, sort of a team. It was originally supposed to be Patty Jenkins, but in fact was for directing the Dark World. I did not know that, Daniel. So thank you. Appreciate it. But the thing that really like I said, the thing that he really started to humanize Loki was the fact that he did care about Freya and he did care about Thor. And I think even in his own way, he did care about Odin. He may have somewhat resented what Odin did to him and everything, and taking him away from his home. But at the same time, Odin did it because I think Odin himself felt somewhat guilty. And, Loki is circumstances that were out of his control. And, I can honestly, in a way, relate to how Loki felt when he found out that he was actually a frost giant from, what's the name of that planet or that realm or whatever they called it. Well, either way, the realm of the frost giants. And he discovers that he actually is a frost giant. And, speaking from, like I said, speaking from personal experience, when I found out that I was adopted, back about, it's been 10 plus years now. Well, Loki's reaction wasn't all that unexpected because he he thought all his life that he was just the other son to Odin and Freya. He did not realize that he was in fact adopted or taken by Odin back to Asgard. And there's a lot of resentment there, and I can understand him being resentful. I was too. I mean, I'll be the first to admit I said some things to my mom, to my adopted mom, well, my mom, that I'm not proud of now, but thankfully we've been able to. This is long past caring, but we were able to reconcile, and we have a good relationship again. So Loki's reaction to him discovering that he's a frost giant, not an Asgardian, and what exactly happened, the circumstances surrounding him being taken by Odin, it can be a shock for anybody. And, later on in Ragnarok, he's there on Asgard ruling in Odin's name, appearing as Odin practically, because we see that at the end of Thor: The Dark World. Anything when he's impersonating Odin. And Thor says anything to Odin / Loki. He wasn't evil. He was simply misunderstood or something to that effect. And I honestly liked that because it showed that Thor did love Loki. It really did. It showed that Thor did care for his brother, and we do have those scenes in Thor Ragnarok and everything where you see the two of them working side by side, and he's like, "Let's do sick prisoner." He's like, "I don't want to do sick prisoner. We're doing sick prisoner. I don't want to do this." He's like, "Help! Help! This man is not well." I love that whole exchange between Loki and Thor. I do. And even even in Ragnarok, Loki is not the bad guy. Hela is. Hela's the bad guy. She's a bad guy. She's a very, very bad lady, but she's played by a very good actress, and of course, being Kate Blanchett. And this is good segue as any. Let's talk a little bit about Hela from Thor: The Dark World, or Thor Ragnarok. Excuse me. Hela, granted, she is another one of those one-off villains, but she is a villain that is to a degree relatable because she is a holdover from when Asgard was more of a conquering nation. We are the Revengers. Nice one, Daniel. Very nice. Very truly. But Hela, she was stuck in limbo or wherever she was stuck at until Odin died. And then she's like, "Hello, boys." And you could tell that Kate Blanchett had a lot of fun with that part and anything because obviously she has done parts in other big franchises, of course, Lord of the Rings as Galadriel, and of course her brief appearances in the Hobbit films. But you could tell that Blanchett really had a lot of fun playing the baddie and playing a really good baddie, in my opinion. And, Hela is actually one of the causes of the destruction of Asgard. But unfortunately, she goes just a hair too far. Like, okay, fine, you want to come in with the conquering and the destroying and the wiping out of all the good people and just make Asgard a conquering nation again? Okay, fine, go resurrect your undead army from down its crypt and resurrect your big old giant wolf Fingir, I think that was the wolf's name. I'll say it. I love that wolf. I do. He's big, he's black, he's terrifying. I love it. But Hela, she is kind of what you would call a doomed character because she is a person out of time, so to speak. She is, like I said, a holdover from when Odin and her were going on all of these conquests of different realms and different worlds and all this other stuff. And when Odin's like, "Oh, I don't want to conquer no more," and she's like, "Well, I still want to." He's like, "You're not going to." He's like, but she's like, "Dad, I want to," and he's like, "Okay, you're imprisoned." And she's just cast aside. She has been wronged, and I don't think she's unjustified in being just just a little bit pissed off. Do I totally agree with how she reacted and behaved in regards to how she felt? No, I don't. But at the same time, she doesn't know any other way to exist. She doesn't know how to evolve beyond what she is. And she was first and foremost a warrior. Yeah, she wasn't bad in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, although that movie is not canon in terms of Indiana Jones. Don't get me started on Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Okay, brief aside, very brief. I don't hate Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I'm just disappointed in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I'm a disappointed parent. The Last Jedi, I'm a pissed off parent who wants to punch somebody in the head. So, and speaking of, not a good segue at all. Speaking of a man who needs no introduction, because well, his name says it all. Welcome, my friend, your friend, fellow ambassador here on the Ambassadorial wing, the George. pesky thing to work. Hey, George, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Can't complain. So, we're talking the villains of Marvel tonight. So, your thoughts on anything I've brought up or different villain you want to discuss yourself?
I like. Well, I will say, like, I feel like Obadiah, Stain, and Hela do not get brought up enough in the conversation of great MCU villains because they are great MCU villains. I mean, Obadiah Stane, like, basically, like, he was so great. Like, you see other Marvel movies try to follow the same formula with him, like Yellow Jacket, for example, in the first Ant-Man film. And I like the
Mm-hmm.
first Ant-Man movie, but like I feel like Darren Cross was like a junior varsity Obadiah Stane. Like if you understand the sports comparison, like Obadiah Stane's
I
like a
do.
varsity
I
level
do.
villain, where Darren Cross
Yeah.
is basically junior varsity. Like you see the
Yeah.
similarities. They later get tech that's similar to the hero that they're fighting against.
Mm-hmm.
And with Hela, like the damage that Hela done, it's like she killed off like most of Thor's friends, like caused all this trouble in Asgard and was so unstoppable that they had to destroy Asgard in order to defeat this person.
They literally had to bring about Ragnarok, which is mean going and getting Surtur's head and putting it in a big bucket of flame and saying, "Okay, Surtur, you're big and giant now. Go kill Hela."
And by the way, with Thor Ragnarok, it also had a good secondary villain. I thought the Grandmaster was a pretty good secondary villain. I mean, obviously played by the great Jeff Goldblum, you're gonna get a great performance. But like even he like was a pretty good secondary villain. And I always feel like when the MCU has secondary villains, they're usually not that memorable. But like he was memorable as the Grandmaster.
Well, that's because it cast a great actor and everything. Although I will say, I don't necessarily consider the Grandmaster a villain per se, though he's not necessarily a good guy. He's not a good guy. He's not a bad guy. He's somewhere in the middle. He's more of a I'm not sure how to categorize him per se. He's not an anti-hero. He's not like Deadpool. He's like a bureaucrat in a manner of speaking. If you follow me, George,
Yeah,
he's
I,
he's
I
a
get you.
he's an administrator who has risen to a high level of prominence, and he's not, like I said, necessarily evil, although he has done some somewhat questionable things. You like him, but at the same time, you're like, I like you, but at the same time, I feel like I shouldn't like you, like at all. Like I feel like I want to punch you in the head with a simmer. Okay, not punch, but hit you in the head with a sledgehammer.
Oh yeah, I get you.
So
And with Loki, yeah, Loki was definitely probably had one of the best like character arcs in the MCU. That's still going on, like
he's not done.
in a
Yeah.
interesting kind of way, because obviously
Mhm.
with the whole multiverse thing, like it's technically
Mhm.
the Loki that's continuing is the one that got defeated at the end of the first Avengers film. But still, like with
Mhm.
Loki, like the art that he's gone through, it's like it's funny. My mom, she's a fan of her favorite character in the MCU is Loki. One of her favorite characters in Harry Potter was
Mhm.
Professor Snape. It's like the similarities to these complex characters that you would think are
Yeah.
bad guys, but they are very complex, and you find and they die doing the right thing at the end.
Yeah, exactly. But the funny thing with Loki is he's not dead.
Oh yeah,
Cal or
absolutely.
whatever
But I
it
mean, like
is.
obviously the original
And
timeline Loki I'm referring to.
oh yeah, obviously. Well, but if you think about it, the original timeline Loki and the Loki we see in the series are one and the same person, potentially, or essentially. Although he is technically a variant. That is true.
Yeah.
So, but you know, this concept of, and I don't want to get off on a big tangent here, but this concept of variance does introduce the idea, and they have explored it in the What If animated series, particularly with Thanos. a Thanos who doesn't go through with his plan, who actually gets talked out of it by Star Lord. Of course, it's T'Challa Star Lord, not Peter Jason Quill Star Lord, or is his middle name Jason? Either way, but you know, we talk about Loki. Obviously, the character that's most closely tied to him in terms of villains is, of course, Thanos, played by, I think, perfectly played by Josh Brolin. And talk about a build up for a character. I mean, the first time we see him is in a end credit or a mid credit scene in the first Avengers. We don't see him see him until Infinity War. And man, is he one tough mother. Now, question, George, how familiar are you with the core comic book origins of Thanos?
I'm still like trying to get into. I'm still like reading like more comics, so I haven't really got into like I like the stuff with Thanos in the comics. But
Mm-hmm.
like I've always been aware of him through other media, and I know that like obviously like his reasons for using one of the Infinity Stones are different from the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, I'm aware
Okay.
of.
There's okay. If you want a full breakdown of Thanos, the channel that I always go to if there's a character or a story arc that I'm not familiar with or I need a refresher on, is Comics Explained. And anything, and I've referenced this channel before. This is a guy that has a great channel, has done a great job with this content, does really great, thorough, entertaining content. Thanos was technically he's a mutated Eternal, technically speaking. They leave that part out in the MCU, which is fine. They do reference Titan as being a alien, as being a far off, distant alien world, but when actually in the comics, Titan is one of the moons of, I think, is it Jupiter or Saturn? It's one of those two. Titan
I think
orbits.
it might be Saturn.
I think it is Saturn because Titan is one of the moons of Saturn. I'm pretty. I say it. That sounds right. But in the MCU, they make Titan a alien world or anything outside of our solar system, which it works. Now in the comics, Thanos is infatuated, and I mean like uber infatuated with the cosmic being of death, who is referenced in different parts of the MCU. I think we even see some statuary of her in Thor: Love and Thunder when they get to the Shrine of Infinity or whatever it is. But clearly in love with death. And yeah, and Daniel, we will get to him here in a little bit because I do want to discuss him. But like I said, we were talking about Loki. It's as good as time as any to discuss Thanos. But what they did with Thanos, because they didn't want to bog us down with a lot of lore, and particularly the cosmic being known as death, as they made his motivation more streamlined. He was doing this because he believed that eventually the universe would run out of space and run out of resources. And I think that was actually a good motivation. I think in the context of the MCU, and I think it was a more believable motivation. It streamlined it, made it more accessible, and it, in a way, made Thanos a somewhat empathetic villain. While we don't agree with how he's carrying out what he's doing, both either on his own without a gauntlet or with the Infinity Gauntlet, there is a rationale to what he is saying and why he's doing what he's doing. But at the same time, you look at Josh Brolin's performance and every from his first speaking appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 to his brief appearance in Age of Ultron in that I think mid or post credit scene where he says, "Fine, I'll do it myself." Yeah, and Daniel, I actually have that comic and everything. I have Infinity Gauntlet. And I have that's the follow up of Infinity War. So, but George, that's kind of the synopsis of Thanos as a character within both the Marvel Comics universe and the MCU. So
Yeah,
he's
I remember
essentially
reading.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember
Go ahead.
reading about the Eternals connection.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, I remember reading about. Like I need to buy like the Infinity like stuff as well, because like I've been buying like graphic novels, but it's like because I also collect DVDs, it's like I kind of like space out when I buy certain things, because I also want to make sure like I have enough time to read the material that I get, like whether it's like Marvel or like DC graphic novels.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Infinity Saga, there's actually there's a third and fourth installment in that series. Infinity Gauntlet deals with the whole crisis about Thanos getting the Infinity Stones, and creating the Infinity Gauntlet. Now, the Infinity Gauntlet in the comics is just a plain yellow glove and everything that Thanos attaches the Infinity Stones to. It's not like what we see in the movies. Now, I'm not. Infinity Gauntlet and the Nano Gauntlet in the MCU, they look badass. I loved what they did there. And I think how he had the gauntlet made by the dwarves at Neverdalir, and all that, and of course that cameo by oh, not
Peter Dinklage.
for Peter Dinklage. Yeah, Peter Dinklage needs to be in more of everything ever.
Yeah, he was like
Yeah, Daniel, I do
underrated
remember
and
that. But Days of Future Past? Yes.
yeah, he was
Yes, he
underrated in
was.
that as well.
I wholeheartedly would. Yeah. But, the thing about Thanos is he was a great big bad final boss villain. He was charismatic, he was to a degree empathizable. He was also a bit tragic because he had unfortunately to kill the one person that he really truly loved. And that was Gamora. And I will say it, in Infinity War, I did feel a little bit bad for him because you see how much it distresses him to have to do what he does to get the Soul Stone. And I love the fact that they did change that particular aspect of the Soul Stone where you have to take a life to get it. And it has to be a life that you care for deeply. Because to wield that much power is not something to be done lightly or easily. And, you know, granted, he was a CGI character, but I will say this: Brolin working through CGI and them using his performance as a roadmap for Thanos. Brolin, he delivered in a way that I couldn't have expected. I didn't know what to expect when we first learned that Thanos was going to be the big bad at the end. I had a good idea who might be the big bad at the end, but I wasn't 100% because I was just as shocked as everybody else when I saw that post credit scene. I'm like, oh crap, they're bringing in Thanos. And that's no small order because you've got a character who has decades upon story surrounding him, not just the Infinity Gauntlet storyline or the Infinity War storyline or any of the other storylines that he's been involved in. Because Thanos he's done a lot more than just that. Obviously, as Daniel Martin mentioned, I think Thanos and Deadpool have a running feud with one another for Mistress Death. And, but, when we first heard that trailer, the first teaser trailer for Infinity War, and Thanos says, "I know what it is to lose." And you're like,
Yeah, Thanos really.
wow. Now, I'm going to ask you this in a very particular way because, like I said, I don't want any spoilers. But since we have now seen Kang both in Loki in the final episode and now in Quantum Mania, thus far, how does he stack up to Thanos?
He's definitely no nonsense. I will definitely say, like, obviously, without spoiling, we all know like the Ant-Man franchise is usually like a more lighthearted, funny franchise for the most
Mm-hmm.
part.
Yeah.
Obviously, like any banter from any hero, Kang's like no nonsense about.
Mm-hmm.
And like I will say like I think Thanos presents a more physical threat, but Kang
Mm-hmm.
definitely I would say he the best way to summarize Kang would probably be like he seems more like militant than Thanos, like mind wise, at least like what you see in Ant-Man in the
He's more
Wasp Quantumania, what you're
cerebral.
gonna see. He definitely's got like a
He's,
more militant like mind compared to like Thanos that just that like will do anything to accomplish his goal.
mm-hmm.
It's kind of
He
hard to explain without spoiling the movie.
comes off more as some. No, I got you. I understand, George. Well, I did do some. I have done some research over the last couple of months and last few days and everything in regards to Kang because I did want to give a educated or well, not educated, but an informed summary of the character. Now, Kang has somewhat of a convoluted yet also very streamlined um, timeline. And everything. He is from the far distant future. Now they have changed this sort of. Well, he who remains, or Kang said, or anything. Uh, I became aware of multiverses stacked on top of one another, and variants of myself also discovered this in the far distant future. Kang is a character from the far distant future who is a descendant of one of two people, either Doctor Doom or Reed Richards. Because his actual name is not Kang, obviously. It is Nathaniel Richards. Now, obviously, in the comics, Kang has been portrayed when he doesn't have his face mask on as a white guy, as a white man. Obviously, they have changed that here. Does that necessarily bother me? No. I don't care if they change the race of a character, so long as the performance is good. And I will say this of Jonathan Major in the season one finale of Loki. And from what I've seen in the trailers and everything of Quantum Mania, he brings it. Now, King isn't so much of a physical threat. His threat comes through strategy and advanced technology and advanced knowledge of the future. And that's how he often um, he outwits the heroes. And there have been instances where Kang does win. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Kang in this particular instance going down the road. Because just my guess, and I don't want you to confirm nor deny this, I get the distinct impression that Kang does get out of the quantum verse. So, like I said, I don't want you to say this, but I have the impression that he does get out. Not the way that he intended, but I get the impression that he does get out. So, and yeah, Daniel Martin and everything. It's one of the teaser trailers where he says, "I've killed Avengers before." He has. He's killed Avengers and he's succeeded. He's conquered the world. He's conquered theoretically the universe in various timelines. And this will not be the last time we see Kang. Obviously, we'll see him in Kang Dynasty down the road in a couple of years, and we'll probably see him in Secret Wars too. It's just a question of when. So, but Kang presents a very different threat compared to Thanos. Thanos is more of the well, he's the fifth threat. He can beat the ever loving crap out of you because he's strong enough to do it. Not to mention when he has the Infinity Gauntlet, he can do all sorts of wacky stuff to you. He can turn you. He can freeze you in time. He can just blast you with the power gem. He can steal your soul. Whatever. Kang is different. And I think what they've done in framing the different sagas, whereas the first 10 years and everything, the first three phases or four phases, no, three phases of the MCU was the Infinity Saga. This next phase is the Multiverse Saga, and I think they picked the right villain for the saga, that of course being Kang. So, but of course, talking about Kang brings me, of course, to, well, my personal all-time favorite Marvel villain ever. Of course, this is not going to be any of the discussion. This is just I'm kind of progressing from one villain to another because it kind of segues. As I just mentioned, Victor Von Doom, aka Doctor Doom, the despotic ruler of Latveria.
Yes, and it's a shame that none of the Fantastic Four movies have done him justice.
I think honestly, Julian McMahon's performance as Doctor Doom in the MC in those was probably the strong suit of both those films. Anything, if nothing else. Now, don't get me started on Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer because I'll go into a rant on that thing, being mainly because of a certain
Yeah,
portrayal of a certain character that I hate.
yeah, I was very yeah, and I don't
But
want to even get into the 2015 abomination against humanity.
uh, yeah, well, Daniel, it's funny. I don't know if any of you have seen my shorts that I've released lately of some of my collection, but I have amassed somewhat of a collection I'm very proud of Doom paraphernalia. And you know what, George? I'm gonna let you talk for a few minutes because I actually show this off. So, um, George, the floor is yours, bud. I'll be able to hear you and everything. I won't be speaking. So,
But Doctor Doom to me is obviously like if you're gonna do a Mount Rushmore of like MCU of like well not MCU like Marvel villains, he's definitely gonna be up there. Like his impact and one of the things that kind of will be sad is I have a feeling that like he's not gonna appear in the first Fantastic Four movie like before Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. I remember there used to be a lot of speculation that he could be, and I remember there were like this like rumor that Doctor Doom could possibly be tied into Wakanda Forever and all that, but obviously that's not true. And yeah, with Doctor Doom, obviously he's one of those villains that he's not just a Fantastic Four villain. He's just like he can be like an Avengers level villain, and that's why I want to see him in the MCU because I think like he would definitely be very good against the Avengers. Of course, we need to get an Avengers team forced formed. And Fantastic Four, I think, has always had a great gallery of villains to begin with. Galactus, especially, one of the greats. And I'm hoping like maybe then the next saga. I don't want to get too far ahead. I have a feeling like Galactus or Doctor Doom are gonna probably be like the villain or the villains of the next phase after the Infinity Saga. That's just my like prediction. It's gonna be a
you mean
long
the
time.
Multiverse Saga?
Yeah, Multiverse Saga. Yeah, sorry, Infinity Saga, Multiverse Saga. But yeah, I can see like Galactus and Doctor Doom, or one of them being the main baddie for like phases 7, 8, 9.
Well, you've got to up the ante with your villains, and well, speaking of upping the ante,
Oh, wait. Oh, there he is. There it is. That is awesome.
I'm not done. I'm not done. Hang on, I'm gonna turn my overhead light on because it is kind of. Hold on, 1 second. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm back. All right, here you can see a little better now.
Oh, nice. I love it.
Not, not done. Excuse me.
That's okay. Oh my goodness, that looks awesome. Is that like a new one or is that like from an old line?
No, this is from 2019.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say like,
I'm
because
not
like back
done.
then I
Uh,
wasn't collecting as much as I've been collecting the last couple of years, so I think I missed out on that one.
Oh, here, Daniel. Sorry. Here, it's Doctor Doom, and then I got this one.
Oh my, that looks
Oh,
so awesome.
not done. Means I remembered this one. I think I've got hanging on the wall for the rest of my collection, or part of my collection.
Oh, King. Oh my goodness.
Can conquer.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're just kind of up. We're just up in the ante. I recently, very like within the last couple of weeks, I got this one. I'm very proud of. And I think, granted, it's not in this box,
Oh
but
my,
still.
that is awesome.
And yes, he does come out of his throne. And yes, he's got his funky little he's got his nice little chalice. He's got his little gun in his holster. This one, this one I had drooled over when I used to work at Walmart. I finally got it back last year, and no hucks because I like to be able to admire my acquisitions. This is my favorite.
I can see why. Oh my. I always see these like statues at like the Midtown comic stores in like the city, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
I want to buy one, but because not just because of like how much money they are, the fact that like I'm commuting into the city, it's like, am I gonna carry this like on a 2 hour bus ride or something? It's like I gotta win the lottery and like order it to like get some of
But
these.
yeah, I understand. But that's my Doctor Doom collection slash my Wang figure that I have so far. That's the only Kang figure I have. I imagine though they'll be doing more now that he's been in Quantum Mania. I I need to get the He Who Remains figure from Loki though because well I'm Ambassador starting his own rogues gallery. And a matter of speaking, Daniel, yes, they will though. Because here's the thing: Doom doesn't have powers of his own. He's a scientist slash sorcerer. He's actually one of the most powerful sorcerers next to Doctor Strange in the Marvel universe. So hopefully this time they'll get him right. I have high hopes in Iggy. I trust. He hasn't disappointed me yet. So, and yes, some people may call me a shill ambassador, just a shill for Marvel and for the MCU. No, I just happen to know what I like. Difference. But yeah, now that I've shut off my Doctor Doom swag, let's get into the character himself. I mean, as you said, we'll probably won't see him for a little while, which I actually think is a good thing because you don't want too many pieces on the board. You want to let every villain have their moment to shine. Now, granted, Kang and Doom have worked together in the past, particularly in the comic books and so on. And I think that would be a great dynamic. I don't know if have you heard some of the fan casting for Doom, George?
I try to stay away from the Fantastic Four fan castings because I feel like when it comes to like these fan castings in general, people are gonna always half the people are gonna be happy, half of them gonna be upset. I just like to trust the process of it because I feel like
Yes.
for the most part, and like this isn't just Marvel. I feel like even with like some DC things, like obviously with some of the Batman films, castings
Mhm.
always turn out to surprise you. Like I remember people weren't so high on Robert Downey Jr. when he got cast as Iron Man, and look what happened. He's like one of the most beloved characters.
Mhm.
I remember some people were uncertain about Tom Holland because he was an unknown, and like look how far he's come as Spider Man. in
Well,
the
hell's bells.
MCU.
Tobey Maguire was unknown until he got cast as Spider-Man. And yes, we will be talking about the Spider-Man Rogues Gallery here in a little bit too. And I think
And
because
like
that's obviously. Go ahead, George, please.
and even though I was like a teenager when Andrew Garfield got casted, I remember people were like, Andrew Garfield, why isn't it like Tobey Maguire? And like Andrew Garfield ended up being like not just like one of the best things about No Way Home, but he was like the best thing about those movies. If he had gotten better movies, I think more people would be talking about him being a great Spider-Man. But the fact is that like the point I'm making is castings to me, I try to trust the process with it because more often than not, someone surprises you. Like Heath Ledger is the biggest example of a villain casting choice that got a mixed to negative reception and just blew everyone away. So like that's why but even though like when I was listening to Fantastic Four castings, I never really heard anything about Doctor Doom.
Well, the one I've heard is and I don't know how you might feel about this. I myself, I would not be opposed if this was in fact who they cast, but I've heard Adam Driver's name dropped as Doom, and I cannot say I would be disappointed in that. So I don't know how you feel about that particularly, but personally, I just want somebody who's going to be able to fill that armor, that very iconic armor.
I mean, I don't want to get into obviously the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and I know you're not a big fan of either, but I will say like Adam Driver was probably the best thing about that trilogy, in my opinion. Like his performance wise, it's just a shame that he kind of got wasted. It felt like his character was wasted. But like I've also seen him in other things. Like I don't know if you ever saw The Last Duel. It came out in 2021, Ridley Scott film with like Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Jodie Comer, and Adam Driver. He was excellent in that film, in my opinion. So I would not be opposed to it. I just hope like the material that he's given is good because I think with better material, if he was given better material in Star Wars, he would have standed out a lot more than he ended up standing out. But even then, I thought he was one of the
Oh
best
yeah,
things about that trilogy.
yeah, and I put matter about this very topic myself. Yes, Adam Driver in a lot of ways literally carried the sequel trilogy on his back, and he was one of the better parts of it. I will not dispute that by any stretch. So, um, but it's going to be interesting to see because Doom and Kang both are long standing villains. And I think there's both were both the brainchild of Stanley and Jack Kirby. Literally, they were created by Lee and Kirby, and they have such long histories in the Marvel universe. I don't want to see them wasted in a way that some of the earlier villains for the MCU were. And it's really, dang, I know that. Cool. Yeah, because
Oh
isn't
wow!
yeah, Adam Driver is originally from India. I think Adam Driver is originally from Indiana, I think, or he went to school here, one or the other. But yeah, it's Doctor Doom is one of those villains that you can't do as a one-off. He is a high tier, very visible, very iconic villain, just like Kang is. Anything, and I honestly like the fact that we got introduced to him in Loki, and the way we got introduced to him is he wasn't the villain, he wasn't the bad guy per se, but he was like, I'm tired, I'm old, and I don't want to do this anymore. And honestly, Jonathan Major's performance, I cannot wait to see what he did in Quantum Mania. I'm going to be very impressed. And I think Kang is going to be a villain that's going to stick in people's minds for a long time. And You brought up Tobey Maguire and you brought up Andrew Garfield, and of course we can talk about the Spider-Man villains for a little bit because talk about a great rogues gallery there just on its own. I mean, Spider-Man's rogues gallery is in and of itself one of the best. I mean, I did a whole stream back a couple of years ago where we spent like 3 hours or more. Who's the best villain and who would beat who in a head-on match between the best villains of Spider-Man and Batman's rogues galleries. I think the winner turned out to be I think it was Deathstroke. Deathstroke ended up winning.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
Jonathan. That's Daniel. Daniel, that's what I've heard about Jonathan Majors. So go ahead, George.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like obviously we just got done talking a little bit about Fantastic Four. To me, Fantastic Four, X-Men, and Spider-Man have the best rogue galleries in Marvel.
Mhm.
Like Spider-Man, like he's got, from like Doc Ock and Green Goblin in the early days, and it's like there's always like an evolution to the villains. And to be honest, like the early, like the Stanley Steve Ditko villains, like from those days, like obviously like they still stand out even like 50 or like, yeah, 50 years later. Well, actually 60 years later. The character has been around for 60 years now, so it's like 50, 60 years. The Green
Mhm.
Goblins, the Doc Ocks, even the Vultures, Mysterios, Craven the Hunters of the world. But it's like even like the 80s, you saw like with like a new Goblin and Hobgoblin coming in, and unlike the Green Goblin who liked to go after Spider-Man personally, Hobgoblin was more like into being like into crime, like getting involved in gang wars. You have Kingpin who can be like both Spider-Man and Daredevil's
Ooh.
archenemy. And I
Yeah.
think I would love to see Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin face off against Tom Holland's Spider-Man. By the way,
Oh, we
that's like
will.
that
I would
that's a
bet. I
fan
would bet
that's a fan dream that I have.
we
Then you had
will.
Venom come in, and then like the '90s, you had Carnage, and some Spider-Man villains can be a miss. The Clone Saga of the '90s, I wasn't a big fan of having all those clone
Mhm.
villains and all that. But like
Mhm.
even like in modern day, a villain like Mr. Negative, who I wasn't so hot on when he first appeared in the comics, but then when you see something like, let's say, the 2018 Spider-Man game take him a whole different
Ooh.
level.
Yeah, definitely.
Like Spider-Man has, to me,
Definitely.
probably obviously the
Yeah,
best
I
rogue gallery. And for most of the Spider-Man films, the villains in those movies always are well performed. Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin was excellent. Alfred Molina as Doc Ock was excellent. I was never a big fan of Sandman, but like Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman in Spider-Man 3. Not a big fan of Venom in that film, but I did like Sandman in that film. And the MCU, forget about, like, we talked
mhm.
about the villain turning in No Way Home. Michael Keaton as Vulture and Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio were great and are in my top 10 favorite MCU villains.
Especially, I I speaking personally, in terms of villains, I never cared for Mysterio because I never considered him that big of a threat. I mean, yeah, he can do all the stuff that he can do, but at the end of the day, he's just a guy in a suit with some laser projectors on his suit. Vulture, especially Michael Keaton as Vulture, could have asked for a better casting, and I don't, I will never, it will never fully click with me why people have such a negative feeling. And I don't want to get off on a big tangent here in terms of topic, but I don't understand why people have such a major issue with Tom Holland as Spider-Man. For Pete's sakes, um, Tobey Maguire and uh, Andrew
Andrew Garfield.
Garfield, yeah, Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, they were not big names, no stretch, and they got lucky. They got a very fortunate casting for both those parts. Now, are there some issues with their performances in both? Yes, of course there is. But at the same time, they were not major league big name actors in Hollywood. And they got catapulted to the forefront, McGuire more so than Garfield, unfortunately. But the villains in the home trilogy, Homecoming, Far From Home, and No Way Home, they nailed it. And I will say it, I saw the first Spider-Man, I saw the first Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield, and I thought it was really solid. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I'll pick up and everything. I'll probably get copies of both of them because I'm a completionist and everything. I like to have the set of everything, even if it's something I hate. Sequel trilogy, but we're not going there tonight.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way with my DVDs. Like, I like.
Yeah, but you know, it is iconic. I mean, like you mentioned, you got Doctor Octopus, you've got you got the Green Goblin, you got the Hobgoblin, you've got Sandman, you got the different iterations of the Sinister Six. I mean, Alfred Molina as as Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2, he was great.
Oh, he was
He was
one of my top three
absolutely,
favorite villain performances out from Molina in a comic book movie.
and and his portrayal in the Spider-Man 28 for the X for the PS4, just brilliant. And it was all CGI, but it was just pitch perfect. So I'd say Daniel, lovely Vulture, but John Malkovich would have been perfect if he would have taken the casting. That's the thing.
Well, he was
If he would have done it, Daniel, we don't know if he would have.
Well, John
Go
Malkovich
ahead,
was
George.
originally going to play Vulture in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4, so I think that's what Daniel Martin's like bringing up because
Oh, okay,
a
okay,
month
I got you,
because I remember this was
Daniel.
like back like I said, like I've been following some movie news not as much as I do now, but like I followed some of it back when I was in middle school, and I remember following the infamous Spider-Man 4 saga where like no one knew what was going on. I remember people thought the Lizard was going to be the villain. Then a month before the film got canceled, it got canceled January 2010. They announced that John Malkovich was going to play Vulture in the film, and Vulture was going to be the villain in Spider-Man 3 with Sandman. He was going to be played by Ben Kingsley until Sony put pressure to put Venom in the film.
That sucks. And
Yeah,
I will say this in terms of Venom. Tobey Maguire is not Venom.
Topher Grace.
Tom Hardy is Venom. Yeah, Topher Grace is Venom. Topher Grace is not. I'm
It's like
sorry.
I'm a
Venom should be the just let me say this real quick, George. Venom should have been
okay.
the villain in his own movie, just him and Spider-Man, no other villains off to the side. Go ahead.
It's like, well, like I enjoyed Topher Grace in that '70s show. It's like every time I see him in Spider-Man 3, and I saw Spider-Man 3 before I became a fan of that '70s show. I watched it as a teenager and still watch it to this day. But like after I got into
Mhm.
that '70s show, it's like every time I rewatch Spider-Man 3, and I do enjoy Spider-Man 3, so I do rewatch it pretty often. It's like I just see Eric Foreman trying to be a villain. And it's like I feel like it's like in the grand scheme of the multiverse, I feel like if like his dad from that '70s show saw him, he would like make a foot in the ass joke about it. But like Tom Hardy, it's like even though his movies aren't all that great, it's like Tom Hardy at least feels like what I think Eddie Brock would be.
Yeah, because honestly, now, Grant, I still have not seen the first Venom. I do have a copy of it. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I loved Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage, and honestly, Woody Harrelson as Carnage. I don't care what anybody else says, and everybody else is entitled to their opinion, but I don't care about someone else's opinion. I care about mine. And Tom Hardy as Venom and Woody Harrelson as Carnage, they kicked ass. They really
Oh, Woody,
did.
yeah, Woody
I know it's
Harrelson as
not. It may not be
Carnage.
the best. They may. Well, the reason why this may be one of the reasons why, but the main reason why they picked him was because of the role he played in Natural Born Killers next to
Yeah, yeah, I still gotta see
Juliette
that one,
Lewis.
but I understand why, because I remember like
So,
around that infamous Spider-Man
mhm,
4 saga, when they thought when people wanted Carnage to be the villain, Woody Harrelson was like a fan cast that people had at the time. It was like people fan
mhm.
casted him and Jim Carrey, I remember, and I was like, for some reason, I feel like Woody Harrelson would make more sense, even though I never saw Natural Born Killers at the time.
Mhm. Well, and like I said, Venom and Carnage very much deserve to be the center focus villain in their respective movies. You know, Spider-Man 3 would have been much better if they just focused on Venom and Eddie Brock and Peter and that's it. And then had the whole story, the side story with Mary Jane and left out Sandman and, um, Harry, or save Harry for Spider-Man 4 or 5. Give him a little more time to stew and really get cheesed off about what Peter supposedly did to his dad. I would have much rather had that rather than had three villains that on their own could carry an entire movie. Because these are all A or B list villains. And I think Sandman's a B lister. He's a good villain. He's been part of various iterations of the Sinister Six throughout the years. And you got Harry and everything as the new Goblin. Again, could have been the villain in his own movie. But when you shoehorn Sandman and New Goblin and Venom all into the same movie, it dilutes the performances. Now, have there been instances where the villains have teamed up? Yeah, aka the Sinister Six. But the Sinister Six has always had kind of a somewhat changing roster, but had two or three core character villains that were always the main part of that group. It was usually the main one was Doctor Octopus, and then maybe Green Goblin, and then Sandman and Electro, and then maybe look at the Spider-Man 2018 game. That was a perfect combination for the Sinister Six for that game, not to mention a great incarnation of that team.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also the thing is, people like who don't read the comics don't really realize like how like significant of a villain Harry was when he was Green Goblin in the comics. Like some of the things that he put Peter Parker through when he was Green Goblin. So like he could have carried the movie as like the new Goblin,
Mm-hmm.
like if he was like the villain, because like if you read
Mm-hmm.
like some of the storylines from the 70s and 90s when Harry Osborn was the Green Goblin, like he did some really messed up stuff to get revenge, to try to get revenge on Peter Parker. Like what you saw in Spider-Man 3,
Yep.
that's like mediocre compared to some of these like things in the comics that he pulled off.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about the villains of the Marvel universe. You can take them in any number of directions and be a captivating and a still intimidating villain for the hero to work off of. And that is especially because none of these are like per se super powered villains. These are guys in suits or guys that have had accidents where they got their powers, like with Sandman or with Doctor Octopus or even with Electro. And I will say this: in a lot of ways, Jamie Foxx's performance in No Way Home, Electro, he really redeemed that performance in a lot of ways, I feel.
Oh, he did.
And
He definitely
you know,
did.
Jamie Foxx, Jamie Foxx himself, great actor. And that's the one thing I've really been deeply impressed with in terms of the MCU so far. Actors that they've gotten to play these villains, they have really nailed it. And there's one that we haven't really discussed, and it's from a more recent film. That's of course 11th. Yeah, Christian Bale as Gore, the God Butcher. Talk about a very empathizable villain. Here's a guy who had faith in the god of his world or whatever, and instead was completely screwed over by a cold and unfeeling universe and a cold and unfeeling deity, and not unjustifiably so.
Yeah, Gore to me was like I be honest, I wasn't the biggest fan of Thor: Love and Thunder, but like Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher to me was the biggest highlight of that film. And like when I heard like Christian Bale was gonna play, I was like, okay, we're definitely in for a very good villain.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I would have wished, and this is something I've heard a lot of other people say as well, I wish he would have had more screen time. I really do. I wish Gore or Christian Bale as Gore would have had more screen time in the Love and Thunder. So, but for the time that he was on the screen, he really nailed it. He did. And,
Oh,
and you look down.
absolutely.
I mean, you look down the list. I mean, we've already talked about Jeff Bridges as Obadiah Stane. We've talked Josh Brolin as Thanos. We've talked about Tom Hiddleston as Loki. We've talked about uh, Kate Blanchett as Hela. And that's just honestly, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, you got Jamie Foxx as Electro, you got Alina as Doctor Octopus, you've got Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin, and on and on and on. And I mean, I honestly, this might be me going out on a limb, but I have to say, thus far in terms of the MCU, they have casted some really excellent actors and actresses as the villains in these films. Of course, there is one that I kind of wanted to touch upon too, and kind of moving in from less of the earthbound villain to more of the cosmic villains. Ego from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume Two, played by
Oh, he's
Kurt
another
Russell.
he's another underrated villain. Like the way like the setup for him, it's like at first you think he's this father that just wants to see his long lost son, but then it's like as you're like learning the when he's speaking, it's like you get this uneasy feeling, and then when he
Mm-hmm.
reveals what he did and like what his like intentions are, it's like talk about like a twist villain that actually was done perfectly well.
Yeah, and I have to agree. And I do want to address Daniel. Do you guys think we'll see Null in the movies? They hinted at him with the Necro Sword in Thor: Love and Thunder. I don't know, honestly, Daniel, to give you a definitive answer. I know that he's like
Oh,
a high tier, like a high tier symbiote or something along those lines, or
he's like the
something to
symbiote
that
god,
effect.
basically. He's like the symbiote god.
Okay,
Like I think he's got
okay,
ties to like Eternals as well. I feel like
hmm
s- that's something they would have to work out. I think with Sony because he's heavily tied to Venom. Not even
yeah,
so much like he's tied to Spider-Man, but it's like mostly Venom. And knowing Sony, they would probably want that in like a big
mhm.
event Sony verse film. But I mean, in the
Probably,
grand scheme of the multiverse, you never know what can happen.
yeah.
Like you never like they could be saving it for a big
As I was
event
saying,
live action Spider-Verse film.
they might be. They very well might be. And like I said, we were talking about Kurt Russell's ego, and yeah, he came off very at first very congenial and not at all menacing or evil or anything. But as the movie goes on, the layers start to peel back, and you start to get more uneasy and more uneasy. And Manta starts to talk to Drax and Gamora more often, and come to find out that he's the one that killed Peter's mom. What an ass! What an asshole of a planet! Literally, because he is quite
Oh
literally a
yeah.
planet. He's Ego, the living planet, and man, what an ego he had.
Well, think about all
But
those kids
Kurt
that he
Russell
also
as
killed.
yeah,
Like all those
and
kids
how?
that apparently Yondu like brought before like he captured Peter Quill and decided not to bring him. Like when like Gamora and Nebula saw the graveyard, as I call it, that's like that was like really telling.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you take away the stuff about him making Quill's mom get that cancer.
Well, not to mention, one of my favorite lines is Volume 2. You shouldn't have squashed my boombox and you shouldn't have killed my mom. Cheesy line, but perfectly justified, and I probably would have said the same damn thing myself. You shouldn't have smashed my Walkman and you shouldn't have put the cancer in my mom. Now I'm going to kick your big plant-sized ass. That, of course, that was never actually said, but that's just me. But, as I said, we're moving kind of further out into the more cosmic area of the MCU, and of course, you got Ego, who was a planet, and then you got one of the great big bads of the Marvel universe, who is a guy who literally eats planets. Of course, we're talking about Galactus.
Oh yeah, that
Oh
the one
crap!
that the one that I will hold on to being the villain of the next saga.
Probably. Well, here's the thing too. If you remember George in Thor: Love and Thunder, all those sculptures down the hallway there in that lead to the Fountain of Eternity, Galactus is there. So is one of the oh crap, Celestials. I don't know which one, but one of the Celestials is there. We're going to get Galactus eventually. And he may be the coup de grace for the MCU. He may be the final big boss when they finally decide to wrap up the MCU and everything years down the road. I'll be an old man by the time they get that done. I remember the very first MCU film, and it was Robert Downey Jr., and it was
Oh man,
awesome.
like I'm thinking of like my age when like this stuff happens. Like I just turned 26 in October. Like by the time like
Mm-hmm.
if the dates don't get moved, Secret Wars will come out like around the time I'm gonna be turning 30. It's like is like a lot is like phase 9 gonna be when I'm 40. Like like I'm just like oh man.
Well, and I mean, and here's the thing. They have proven they can do large scale. When I say large scale, I mean in terms of size. They have proven they can do large scale characters in the MCU with the Eternals and with the Celestials. We've seen it now. It can be done. And yes, Daniel, I'm actually going to leave that up. I'm going to leave your comment up there for a few minutes because, okay, I know I said I wasn't going to go on a rant, but damn it, this is rant worthy. I remember when the trailers started coming out for Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, and the first thing my thought went to is Silver Surfer. We're going to get Galactus. We're going to get to see a version of Galactus. And then I went and saw the movie, and then Galactus appeared. And it wasn't a big guy in a ship. It wasn't a guy in purple armor. It wasn't even a guy, like a really large guy. It was a freaking cloud.
Yeah, I was like, what? Like,
And I
what's
was
going
like,
on
what
here?
the hell is this? What
Like it
the?
just didn't make sense.
What in the name of the one above all's butthole is this? The one above all is the essentially God in the Marvel universe. What in the name of the one above all is this? This isn't a dude in armor. This isn't a giant guy in armor. It doesn't even have to be purple armor. This is a guy in a ship that has this equipment that sucks the energy out of a planet. This isn't Galactus. Giant
That
CGI fart cloud.
that was just like the biggest like mess
What
up
the
of any Marvel brand
like?
movie.
What in the actual? It still hurts my brain to think the first big screen appearance of Galactus, and he was a cloud, a big angry fart cloud in space.
It's just yeah, and it's like if
Yeah.
Deadpool 3 lands up being like a multiverse movie and it's like exploring the multiverse before like he lands up in the MCU, because I have a feeling that could possibly be what happens.
Oh,
I would
that'll
love
probably
for him
happen.
him to like be in the Fantastic Four universe and be like, wait a minute, this universe where they messed up Galactus,
Oh,
like
I
just
will die. I if will laugh my ass off and happily if that happens. I will.
like.
But Galactus is not a cloud. He's a cosmic being who looks awesome.
Yeah,
He wears
he's
purple
got this
armor.
yeah, he's got such a cool design, and yet they
Yeah,
made him this
and
cloud.
you make him a freaking cloud. Like, what the hell is this? It's like that scene from Zoolander. What is this? A school for ants? How can we be expected to teach children how to read when they can't even fit inside the building? How am I supposed to be intimidated by a giant far clown? Shut up.
Pretty and happy.
Honey, I love you, but shut up. You're out of
Oh
your
my
depth here. I love you, but you're out of your depth here. Galactus is not a cloud. And I swear by all that is that God that all God that created that is holy and good in this world. I swear, if they screw up Galactus again, I am going to send Kevin Feige the most hot-tempered email he will have ever received in his entire freaking life, and I will say, quit. Quit now. You screw up Galactus again like they did back in 2000 whatever. Quit now and put somebody else in charge of your job.
He's a happy cloud.
Galactus is not a clown. That's going to get clipped out, I guarantee you.
Oh my gosh.
I may clip it out.
Oh,
I may clip it out myself. I may turn this into a clip or short. Galactus is not a cloud. The Eater of Worlds. What were they thinking? No, that's what will have come out. Okay. Okay, this is going to go
Daniel
a smidge
Martin,
off the
don't even
rail.
bring up the Green Lantern thing either. Oh my goodness, that was another one. Like that was another film I was looking forward
No,
to, and like, you talk about movies in my DVD
I mean,
collection. I was talking about like collecting the worst. Green Lantern is my coaster. Like it's a coaster for my drink.
okay. All right, I'm going to say this, and this will really, I hope this lands as well as I hope. That cloud in Fantastic Four, The Rise of the Silver Surfer, is the cloud that would have come out of Galactus's ass after he ate a planet and passed gas.
Oh my goodness.
I'm saying that's what Galactus's fart would look like.
And I wouldn't be surprised.
Fan, drink the goo. Drink the goo is pot licking, poop, and shrooms. I think we have a spammer.
Oh, what the?
And you're in timeout.
Yeah, I've never seen that
Oh,
person.
look at his name. Yeah, look at his name. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Daniel Martin agrees with you. Green Lantern.
Like,
You get that off my Funko Pop right now. She's screwing my collection.
oh my goodness.
I have a Funko Pop of Galactus, and she put some pink thing on top of the pop.
Ooh.
You put a scrunchie on Galactus? I love my wife. 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 Daniel, you're killing me. When I planned this stream last night, I didn't expect it to go this way. Meanwhile, in our bedroom, Madame Ambassador is laughing her head off. I think she's feeling better. That's a good thing. Yeah, Daniel, you're not wrong. Putting a pink scrunchie on Galactus?
I didn't have to make I'm so happy. People are happy clouds. They match the color.
Stay away from my Funko Pops. You want to put stuff on? You want to put stuff on yours? Put it on yours. But you leave my Funko Pops alone.
I didn't take it out of the box. I could have. I considered it, but then he really would have been.
You see the eye? The eye is twitching.
And that scares me. Why? Girl like a girl.
Oh my. Defiled Galactus, Daniel Martin.
Okay, we're going to try and salvage the remainder of this stream because we're going to go for just a little bit longer. That's what she said. I'm done. I'm done. Good night, folks. I'm done.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. All right. Okay. Question for you, George. If whenever we get to see Galactus, obviously he will be a CGI character. Now I know this is kind of not in your lane per se, but let's just pretend for a few minutes that it is. Who do you think would be a good voice actor for Galactus?
If he wasn't already used for Thor Ragnarok as Salter, I would probably say Clancy Brown, who's also known as the voice of Lex Luthor in the DC animated universe. But yeah, he was the voice. for that character in Thor Ragnarok, and I think he probably, because like he's got like he would definitely have that good combination of like having that voice, like because he's an excellent voice actor. Trying to think like what other like voice actors would probably be very good for Galactus. This one he's an old one. I who knows if he'd probably still be around when that film comes out. I know voice actor Frank Welker, who's known for voicing Megatron in Transformers. I think he would probably be a good choice if he can.
Well, voice acting, you don't have to. They can. I'm not saying this to be disrespectful or rude. If he's in a wheelchair by then, they can always wheel him in and have him do it.
Yeah, like,
I mean, okay,
because like I know.
Okay, I don't
he's,
say
like, in his 70s.
I mean, okay, I'm going to say this, and I hope it doesn't come off as disrespectful because it's not necessarily meant to be. But I have a feeling that's what they did with Orson Welles when he did the voice of Unicron.
You know what? That wouldn't
Transformers, the movie.
surprise me. That wouldn't. You know what? That wouldn't even surprise me at this point. But I mean, here's the thing: like Patrick Stewart, who's like 82, is saying like he might be on standby for future Marvel appearances, and Ian McKellen could possibly be it. Like they're up there in age, and like if they appear in like Secret Wars or like Deadpool 3 or both, like that's like that will be like that shows like no matter what age, like if you still got it, you can do it. So like definitely. For a voice actor of like any age, like if they still got it, they can still do it. I mean, Peter Cullen, the voice of Optimus Prime, he's still voicing Optimus Prime in the upcoming Transformers movie.
I will not be saying it.
But like he said, like he will continue to do this voice as long as he lives and as long as they keep asking him. So I think the same case could be for any voice actor.
I'm going to throw out a name here, and it might be one that surprises you, or maybe it won't. And it's a guy that's done voice acting in his career, and he's well known for it. Andy Serkis.
Yeah. I mean, I know he already played Claw in Age of Ultron Black Panther, but honestly, like I wouldn't be surprised. But I mean, like I think Marvel did that with Gemma Chan. Like where she was one character in Captain Marvel and play like a different character in Eternals. And also motion capture. You might have to do motion capture work with Galactus. He's like he's like the GOAT of motion capture.
Well, Galactus doesn't move a whole lot per se. He doesn't like just stand around and do nothing, but that could be something that's purely CGI, not so much with mocap of any kind, really. Now, it depends on the design. Because if you've seen designs of Galactus in the past, you don't see much of him except for his face and mouth and his eyes, although his eyes have armor over them as well. But it's all going to boil down to the design. But I swear, if he's a cloud, Kevin Feige.
Oh, I don't think he'll do that. But I also brought up like Andy Serkis for motion capture because he also did the motion capture for King Kong in Peter Jackson's, and that was I mean obviously Galactus is going to be a lot bigger than King Kong, but like obviously like he's already done it for a big character, and film technology and special effects have come a long way since the 2005 film. And by the way, I think that film's an underrated film, but we're not talking about King Kong, we're talking about Marvel. But like the special effects work back then was incredible. So like obviously it can still work today if they go that route and do motion capture with Galactus, not just for Andy Serkis, but for any actor that would be interested if they do Galactus that way.
Yeah. Now, in terms, Galactus and the Celestials, they're the two known cosmic beings, and Galactus is seen more of he can be perceived as a villain, and in a lot of ways what he does is rather villainous, but at the same time it's how he exists. He eats plants so that he can live. So, but just as long as it isn't another cloud, I will be happy.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
but
Don't mess it up, Feige. You got a second. You got a third chance to correct this whole thing with Fantastic Four.
well, technically second chance because there's
Oh,
only been one
second chance.
Galactus appearance.
But I'm talking about the Fantastic Four in general
So,
because
and
they failed twice.
oh, Daniel, I didn't think about that. Do you see Daniel's comment there, George?
Yeah, I
That he
didn't
used
even know
Julie
Julie
Andrews, the voice
Andrews.
of the
Yeah, I didn't know
yeah
she did
of the
the voice.
Karathan, Karathan in Aquaman. Yeah, huh?
Wow,
I
that's
not.
interesting. And
Hmm.
I
Well, but
what's
the
also
thing.
interesting.
Go ahead, George.
Well, what's also interesting is when Aquaman came out, they actually did the Mary Poppins sequel with someone else. So that's an interesting thought, like because like Julie Andrews is known for playing Mary Poppins.
Mm-hmm. So, and I do want to say hello to Chad Ferris, Ferris Geeks World. It's good to see you, buddy. I have not actually seen Ant-Man. I have not seen Quantum Mania yet. We're going to probably go tomorrow afternoon and catch a matinee of that and everything. So, I have seen a few shots of MODOK, and he's pretty in keeping with the what we've seen in the comic books and everything. I think the series as well. So, and here's the thing: MODOK is kind of an absurd character in and of himself. Really, I mean, he's essentially a giant brain that floats with very small arms and legs. So that's not terribly it's not easy to do a semi-realistic. You pretty much have to stick to the original design for the character. So what they did with MODOK, from what I've seen, I'm okay with. So that's not a big that's not a big issue for me. So, but it's I mean, you consider the breadth of the Marvel universe and the villains that it what the MCU has done thus far with those villains. I'd say 85% has been good. I mean, okay, there's some other villains we haven't talked about. Of course, you've got I think it was Daniel or somebody who mentioned Robert Redford's
Oh
character,
yeah,
the from Winter Soldier, Sebastian Stan as the Winter Soldier. Just I for the life of me cannot remember the name of Robert Redford's
Alexander
character out
Pierce.
of Winter Soldier.
Alexander
Alexander,
Pierce.
okay.
Yeah, underrated
Not by any
villain.
means well, and somewhat the thing about Captain America's villains, they are very much of the non-powered sort, really. They're more on an equal footing with him. They're bureaucrats, or in the instance of the Red Skull, they are somewhat augmented human beings, but they're not like super powered per se. And Robert Redford is Alexander Pierce. Just perfect. Just perfect. And Sebastian Stan, you want to talk about a character who's gone through an evolution and everything from when he appeared in the Winter Soldier and when he was in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Another great character right there. I will say I did like the little joke that Shuri makes in the first Black Panther. She's like, "Great, the white boy we have to fix." I'm, and of course, talking about America, you've got the Red Skull played by Hugo Weaving. Loved it.
Yeah,
One of my favorite villains from Phase One. One of my absolute favorite. I was just kind of sad that Weaving didn't come back for the appearances in Infinity War or Endgame as the Red Skull.
yeah.
Anything that bummed me out just a little bit, but at the same time, I get it. He probably had other stuff that he was doing, or he wasn't interested. So fair enough.
Yeah.
But
Zemo's another one. Like Zemo was fantastic in
oh,
Civil War.
oh,
Like a villain
yeah,
that
Baron
accomplished
Zemo.
what he wanted.
Yeah, one of the few villains to actually accomplish his goal, at least for a little while. Yeah,
Yeah.
Daniel, I have to agree. I wish they could have done more with Red Skull too and everything. But I will say, Hugo Weaving in the first Captain America film, he was. I mean, Hugo Weaving's had experience playing villains before. Obviously, he played Agent Smith in the Matrix film. He was Megatron for the Michael Bay Transformers movies. So playing a bad guy is not new territory for him. And I will say, I love one of his lines. Meanwhile, the Fuhrer digs for trinkets in the desert. I love that line. I do. And of course, you got Armandola, who was in the first Captain America, and of course, the Winter Soldier film. And then, of course, he made a reappearance in the What If series as Armandola again. Granted, it was more of a voice performance than anything else, but still, top a very side villain to the main villain. So,
Oh yeah, absolutely. But by the way,
well,
I'm curious, like, of your thoughts. Like, how do you feel? Did you hear that, like, Thunderbolt Ross, that Harrison Ford will be filling in for Thunderbolt Ross in the future for the
yeah,
MCU
I
after William
I
Hurt's
had
death?
heard about that. Yeah, I'd heard
Uh,
about
what,
that.
what what are your thoughts on that? I'm very curious to hear
How
your
do I feel
thoughts.
about it? I am not opposed to it by any means. I am not opposed to Harrison Ford coming into the MCU. I love Harrison Ford. I mean, the reasons are obvious. I mean, this is a guy who's done some of the most iconic characters in cinema history, and he's done other work where he's been very good as well. I mean, he played Jack Ryan in a couple of the Patriot games and Clear and Present Danger. He played Dr. Richard Kimball in The Fugitive. He's done all sorts of work throughout his career, not just Star Wars. I mean, Blade Runner, both the original and 2049 as Deckard. So Harrison Ford coming into the MCU, I don't have a problem. So it's you know, Thomas is one of those characters that a lot of people kind of forgot about after the first Hulk movie, and we really haven't seen him again since then. So him him being recast as with another actor, I think Harrison Ford was a good pick. So I mean, obviously he's going to be ending his run as Indiana Jones with this last movie that's coming out in a few months. So I say give Harrison a chance. He's never disappointed us yet.
I agree. Yeah, no, I agree. It'll be very interesting, especially because, like, how Ross is in the MCU, like from what we've seen of him in Incredible Hulk, Captain America: Civil War. Like, and it'll be very interesting to see, like, him play someone different from, like, from, like, Han Solo, um, Indiana Jones, like,
Or Indiana
like, and, like,
Jones.
other characters that he's played in the past, not just like those iconic characters.
Mm-hmm. Well, and here's the thing: Harrison Ford is a top notch actor. He is by no means a slouch. So you know, most of the movies I've ever seen with Harrison Ford, I've all enjoyed. So then bringing him in to play Thunderbolt Ross, apparently President Thunderbolt Ross, and everything for Captain America: New World Order. I don't have it because it's not the first time that Harrison Ford has played the president. He played the president in Air Force One. If you've ever seen that one, George. Granted, it
It's
was a
been a while since I've
fictionalized
seen Air
president,
Force
just like it
One.
is here.
Yeah, no, it's been a
Great
while,
movie.
but yeah, I remember enjoying Air Force One. Yeah.
I may have to do a review of that point. Also got that's another one's got a really top notch cast. I mean, you got Harrison Ford, you got Glenn Close, you've got Gary Oldman as the villain, and
Oh
so
yeah, I
on.
remember
So
Gary Oldman. He was awesome. He's always awesome in every role.
of course he is. He's free he's Goldman. So, well, we're going to wrap up here in a few minutes, George. But I end with the question of the night, anything so to speak. Whether it's the main Marvel universe or the MCU, and to the chat as well. Who's your favorite villain? Either who has appeared or who has not yet appeared in the MCU or in the Marvel universe. This is going to be a tough question, but
I would say for the MCU, probably Thanos.
And just
and also I'll throw in, since like No Way Home brought in the multiverse, I'll throw in Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin in there as well as my second favorite like MCU villain, and then Loki. Just because like Willem Dafoe's phenomenal as Green Goblin just in general, but like No Way Home he really shined. As far as the comics go, there's a lot of great ones in the comics. Definitely, I would probably go with Dr. Doom.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, like I said, he's not just the Fantastic Four's villain. He's can be any Marvel character or Marvel team's villain. So yeah, I'll probably go with Dr. Doom for like comics.
Like I said, and yeah, Daniel Martin, Killmonger, he was great too. I didn't mean to skip over him, but at the same time, you can only cover so many in a 2-hour stream or whatever.
Michael B. Jordan's a phenomenal actor,
Daniel,
so it helps when you have a phenomenal actor playing him.
Michael B. Jordan. Oh yeah, I still need to watch Wakanda Forever. We got on 4K a few weeks to watch, but and to answer your question, Daniel, I'm okay with the actor that they got to play Adam Warlock. I think he's a good. I think the way they made him up, everything for the character and everything, the adaptation of his design was very much in keeping with how Adam Warlock looks in the comics. So I was not by any means disappointed. And I'll be interested to see what he can him through. So, and let's see, Ferris. In terms of the MCU Thanos, non-MCU movie, either Green Goblin or Doc Ock. Good answers all the way around, Ferris. For me, my favorite villains is ones I actually mentioned earlier on in the stream tonight. I'd have to say, of ones that have appeared both on screen and in film, or in comic and on screen, Apocalypse, because he is that big, dynamic, menacing, just villainous baddie. Not to mention his backstory is fascinating. His power set is across the board awesome. In terms of the MCU specifically, because the X-Men franchise doesn't tie into the MCU, at least, well, not yet. But in terms of the MCU, and this might be a surprise answer for a lot of you, or maybe it won't be. It'd have to be Loki. Because as we've mentioned tonight, Loki's had the most intriguing character arc, the most intriguing journey of all the villains and all the characters that we've met thus far in the MCU.
Absolutely. Yeah, I forgot to mention, Ian McKellen's Magneto as far as like non-MCU movies, along with Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, Alfred Molina's Doc Ock. Like Ian McKellen's Magneto for like non-MCU movies.
Yeah. Like I said, there are no wrong answers on this one, George. It's all personal preference. So
yeah, but I just feel like there's certain villains that kind of get forgotten in the discussion. And Ian
Yeah.
McKellen's Magneto, it just that I mean I get it. He comes across as more anti-hero at times, but it's like he is
Yes.
still a phenomenal like antagonist.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
And yeah,
Yeah.
Daniel Martin's right.
I
Fassbender was also fantastic as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Fassbender and McKellen, they absolutely nailed it. Or anything, and character the same character at different points in his life. Loved it, absolutely loved it. So, well, anyways, guys and gals, that's gonna be the stream for tonight. I do want to thank all of you who tuned in tonight, and I do want to thank you, George, for joining me this evening. Hope you
Oh,
enjoyed yourself
anytime.
as always.
Yeah,
As
absolutely. I
always,
always love
everybody, make
talking
sure you
Marvel.
smash that. Marvel is king. DC is getting there. It will eventually get there. But as always, folks, make sure you smash that like button. You share this out with all your Marvel and MCU fan friends. Tell them to come check out the stream, check out the discussion, check out a bunch of geeks talking about geeky things that they love, talking about the films that they love and the characters that exist in them. So, as I mentioned at the start and everything, guys, as soon as I get my schedule hammered out and everything, and when I start this new job, I will be scheduling my 500 sub celebration stream. We will be doing a watch along for Galaxy Quest, and we will also be doing that first giveaway, which will be a 4K copy of one of my all-time favorite movies, and that, of course, is the Fifth Element. I'll be doing I think I'll do it as a raffle or I'll do it as a poll. What is the ambassador's first name? And whoever wins that, whoever gets that poll gets the prize. So, but anyway, yeah, and Ferris, I have not forgotten about your one request for Batman and Batman 89 and Batman Returns or anything. I've still got that planned. I've just, as with everything else, I gotta make time for it. So, but as always, folks, y'all have a great night. Thank y'all for being here tonight. I hope, like I said, I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed bringing it to you and everything. Y'all take it easy. Stay ambassadorial. And until next time, these are the ambassadors. Signing off.